violence is a violation of human rights and is frequently manifested as domestic abuse. It doesn't care who gets hurt. Anybody from any background, with any gender identity or sexual orientation, has the potential to be both a victim and a perpetrator. Among the actions that constitute domestic violence are psychological abuse, physical abuse, forced relationship, and sexual abuse. Domestic violence can involve controlling someone's actions, who they can see, and how much money they can spend. It doesn't always have to be physical. We acknowledge that victims might be hesitant to speak up or ask for assistance due to worries. Some of them might have a faith that the perpetrator will eventually turn around. In truth, it takes a lot of effort and time to change the way an abuser thinks. And it is not just made by one incident but happens over and over again. There are thousands of cases are registered in court due to domestic violence, but there are many more cases of it go unreported. Hence, domestic violence is not something that anyone should have to put up with. As a caring and responsible society, especially in our country Malaysia, we should be concerned about this issue. It is not just only as a precautionary measure, but also as a guide in knowing the signs of abuse. For more information, please continue watching this video.
Audio Jungle.
Welcome to Surya Utama. I'm Fairuz Binti Rafie.
I'm Nadeerah Binti Abdul.
Today we have come across a hot issue that is spreading on social media around the world, which is domestic violence.
Nowadays, many domestic violence cases arises around the world. Domestic violence is a serious issue in marriage that need to be avoided by all couples. The victims of domestic violence are mostly women or wife rather than husband. This is because husband is more powerful and hot-tempered regarding wife. Besides that, there are many types of abuse that are related to domestic violence in Malaysia.
We will have Aina and Humaira to interview some people to ask their opinion about this issue.
Thank you Nadeerah and Fairuz from the studio. Now together with me, a resident who lives in Selangor. I will ask about her opinion regarding domestic violence. So Miss Maza, who do you think is most likely to be involved in domestic violence?
I think women, especially married women.
Why do you think so?
It is because women always in a more vulnerable position. Women also mostly rely on their husband's money, so they feel that they should stay in the violent relationship. Besides, women who are in violent relationship for longer tend to think that there is no way out of the abuse because they have feelings for each other. Other than that, they also lack of legal and social support systems that makes it challenging for women to seek protection or justice.
Okay, how many types of domestic violence you think there are?
I think there are 5 types of domestic violence, which are the physical abuse, emotional and psychological abuse, sexual abuse, financial and economic abuse, and isolation.
Can you explain a little bit what are those?
Physical abuse involves any form of physical harm or the threat of harm including hitting, slapping, kicking, punching, or using objects to cause physical injury. Emotional abuse involves verbal and non-verbal, and it can badly affect the mental as it destroys the self-worth and self-esteem of someone. Sexual abuse is the exploitative use of sex or the imposition of sexual acts on another person. It can happen physically and verbally. Sexual abuse can also include the unwanted sexual advance to rape within a relationship. Financial and economic abuse include controlling women's access to financial resources or employment opportunities. These can include withholding money, preventing financial independence, or sabotaging career prospects. Lastly, isolation. Perpetrators will isolate their partners from friends, family, or social support networks with the intention to limit the victim's access to assistance or emotional support.
Based on the interview just now, she says that women are the most likely to be involved as a victim in domestic violence, and I agree with her opinion. This is because between 1990 and 1992, the Women's Aid Organization of Malaysia, WAO, estimated that 39% of women experienced violence in Malaysia, which translates to 1.8 million women. While according to other countries estimated from the US Department of Justice, a substantial 95% of assaults on a partner or spouses are committed by men against women. While acknowledging that abuse is not limited to a specific demographic, it is noteworthy that women are disproportionately more likely to be abused than men who are more prevalent as abusers. It is imperative to make it clear that not all men commit domestic abuse and not all women are its victims. Men and women can both be victims or perpetrators of domestic violence. However, women are more frequently reported as victims of domestic abuse. This issue is influenced by several factors. The first one is historical gender roles. Women have historically been viewed as more vulnerable due to traditional gender norms, which may have contributed to power disparities in relationships. Next is about power and control dynamics. Societal structures that historically place men in position of power can contribute to abusive behaviors. This can affect on the power of women because, as we know, women's ability and power is more weak than men. Other than that, economic dependence can make it difficult for women to leave abusive relationships. And lastly is lack of legal and social support. According to research, the majority of women who experience domestic abuse confess that other family members and their in-laws acted as bystanders, sometimes openly inciting the violence without expressing any concern for the safety of the victim. To be concluded, it is important to emphasize that domestic violence happens to any gender and age, but when we talk about who are most likely to be involved in domestic violence, it's mostly on women.
Next, we move to the next part, which is types of domestic violence that women usually experience. Domestic violence can manifest in various forms, such as physical, emotional, psychological, sexual, and economic abuse. Firstly, physical abuse involves any form of physical harm or the threat of harm. It can include hitting, slapping, kicking, punching, or using objects to cause physical injury. Other forms of physical abuse include shutting someone up and giving them ice-cold baths. These types of abuse leave no physical trace. Secondly, emotional and psychological abuse. This kind of abuse includes verbal and non-verbal. It destroys the self-worth and self-esteem. It can involve verbal attacks, humiliation, constant criticism, and manipulation. This form of mistreatment specifically aims at impacting an individual's emotional and psychological well-being. Next, sexual abuse involves any non-consensual sexual activity or coercive behavior. Sexual abuse involves the exploitative use of sex or the imposition of sexual acts on another person. Women are frequently mistreated sexually. They will comply with all demands made by their partners because they believe it to be the correct thing to do. Besides that, financial or economic abuse known as controlling or limiting a woman's access to financial resources or employment opportunities. The perpetrator utilizes their control over the economic aspects of the relationship to subjugate their target. This can manifest through actions such as restricting or withholding the victim's access to financial resources. Lastly, isolation. Perpetrators may isolate their partners from friends, family, or social support networks, limiting the victim's access to assistance or emotional support. The abuser establishes dominance by regulating the victim's social interactions, dictating who they can or cannot meet. Undoubtedly, the victim may find themselves socially isolated.
We're back again to Surya Utama Studio. My name is Aina Mardia, and together with me, my partner, which is Aqilah Humaira. As we know, domestic violence can badly affect the victims and cause trauma to them. There are a lot of victims who are now seeking for treatment due to the serious effect of the domestic violence. The effect of domestic violence can be seen clearly on the physical and mental health of the victims.
Moreover, for the last previous year, the world have been affected by the virus COVID-19 that caused many people to stay quarantined at home. We believe that the pandemic has increased the amount of domestic violence in the society. Now, we will have Fairuz and Nadeerah at the side to interview some people to ask their opinion regarding this matter.
Thank you, Aina and Humaira. I'm Fairuz Binti Rafie, and now I'm at Jalan Desa Palma. Here with me now are one of the residents here. Hello, Miss. Hello. Alright, Miss. I think you might know a little bit of about domestic violence that happens in our country, right? So, what do you think are the effects after he or she being a victim of domestic violence?
I think it's basically affects on two kind of situation, which are mental and physical health. For example, pregnant women. I think it gives such a big impact on their mental health by having extreme stress, and it causes miscarriage.
Thank you, Miss.
Welcome.
Hello, Miss. I think you might know a little bit of domestic violence that happen in our country, right? So, what do you think are the effects on a person after he or she being a victim of domestic violence?
Okay, for me, based on the news I have read related to domestic violence, I think that many of them having a physical attack, such as wound, bruises, and even more worse is a bone fracture. So I believe that these kinds of effects have been experienced by many of them.
Okay, thank you, Miss.
Thank you, Aina and Humaira. I am Nadeerah Binti Abdul, and now I am at Jalan Desa Palma. And here with me, one of the residents of Jalan Desa Palma. Okay, Miss, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sure.
Okay, in your opinion, does domestic violence increase during pandemic in Malaysia?
Yes, in my opinion, I think domestic violence increased higher during the pandemic. This is because of many workers quitting their job due to lockdown, and indirectly this action will ruin their family financial and emotional damage. It also will lead to violence in their marriage. As we know, when husband and wife are not in a good condition and good mental health, they will start to fight and it will cause domestic violence.
Okay, thank you, Miss, for your opinion. Okay, Miss, can I ask you a question about domestic violence?
Yes, okay.
Okay, in your opinion, does domestic violence increase during pandemic in Malaysia?
I think domestic violence increased higher during pandemic. This happened when everyone is not allowed to leave the house for the long period of time. This is because when sitting at home without doing anything for a long period of time will cause individual stress, and this matter will tend to domestic violence when married couple are not satisfied with their partner.
Domestic abuse can have a negative effect on a person's physical and mental well-being as well as their everyday routine. Research has shown that long-term domestic abuse can negatively impact a victim's health, increasing the risk of conditions like miscarriage, mobility difficulties, a variety of illnesses, weight loss, and HIV. This kind of unwanted behavior is known as a transient consequence of domestic abuse, and it will eventually disappear as the physical wound heals. When there are miscommunications between the husband and wife, this usually occurs. In addition, a lot of victims of domestic abuse experience mental health issues as anxiety, despair, low self-esteem, PTSD, and fear. More severe long-term implications include those that affect the victim, their children, and other members of their immediate family. For example, verbal abuse that is conveyed by threatening language or a harsh tone can easily result in psychological harm. Such behaviors show a lack of respect and an inability to manage anger and stress. Mental tensions follows, which leads to sadness, inferiority complex, and a loss of drive. In conclusion, domestic abuse has a real impact on the victim's physical and mental well-being. Children, women, pregnant women, and people of any age or gender can all experience the suffering of being a victim. It will be accomplished by establishing boundaries, excluding the other spouse from their friends, family, and all other loved ones, and even managing their finance.
The global lockdowns imposed during the COVID-19 pandemic have led to a significant increase in domestic violence against women and children worldwide. Reports indicate a surge in cases in various countries, including Malaysia. The Women's Aid Organization reports a threefold increase in domestic violence since the movement control order was implemented, with vulnerable employment exacerbating the situation for many women. Malaysia has witnessed a rise in workers leaving their jobs due to unpaid care responsibilities during the pandemic, contributing the financial stress and potentially triggering domestic violence. The restrictions and challenge brought about by the pandemic have compounded the issue, with a sharp increase in reported cases. The economic consequences of the pandemic, job losses, and financial hardships have become contributing factors to domestic violence. Social isolation, exacerbated by lockdowns, is identified as a common tactic employed by perpetrators of domestic violence. The stress induced by the pandemic, coupled with economic challenges and a lack of social support, has created a fertile ground for abusive behaviors. The fear of contracting the virus may also hinder victims from leaving abusive situation, further complicating the issue. In conclusion, domestic violence is a significant problem in Malaysia, particularly affecting women. The issue is complex, influenced by historical gender roles, power dynamics, societal norms, and lack of support. While men can also be victims, women are more commonly affected. Different types of domestic violence, including physical, emotional, sexual, financial, and isolation abuse, highlight the need to recognize and address various forms of harm. Breaking the silence is crucial, and communities should promote understanding and support. Legal protection, counseling, and strong social networks are essential for helping victims. Domestic violence has severe consequences affecting victims' physical and mental health, particularly among vulnerable groups. The COVID-19 pandemic has worsened the situation, leading to more reported cases due to lockdowns and economic challenges. Addressing domestic violence requires a comprehensive approach, including legal change, awareness efforts, and robust support system. The focus should be on creating a culture of respect and equality for everyone, regardless of gender. Breaking the cycle of domestic violence requires a collaboration from communities, policymakers, and support organizations.